Hey guys, sorry I'm speaking for Earthwalker Primitive. Down here in my basement today, wanted to be outside to shoot this video, but it's extremely windy outside, which is really depressing because it is bright and sunny outside, and but the wind is so bad it definitely would have affected this video, and it's been windy for the last 2 days. And so I'm down here in my basement. For those of you who live in anti-basement regions, this is a basement. For those who've never seen one, it's the underground portion of the house. So, but it's definitely quiet down here. So, this video I kind of wanted to revisit the braided ridge line that I featured in one of my videos previously. I had a lot of questions about that, and I'm glad I had a lot of questions, and I'm glad to get good, decent questions, and I'm happy to answer them. I decided to do a video about it to answer a few of them at the same time, and also to demonstrate. Some people asked how this was made, so I'm going to demonstrate it. If you remember from that video, or if you haven't seen that video, I constructed a braided ridge line with an eye in it. Okay, and this is great to keep. I keep this for mostly for my shelter, for using a poncho or a tarp, to have a permanent, strong, durable ridge line. One that, because it's braided, it's going to hug around the tree when I use it. Basically what it is it's a length. This one here is about just a little over 10 feet long, and I just got the end knotted and burned, and then one end has an eye in it, and the object is to wrap that eye around the tree and pull your length through it, and that secures onto the tree, and then you can use whatever hitch you want with the other end to do various different kinds of shelters or whatnot. But it's also multiple use, because you can use this for many different tasks out in the woods, and it's something that I pre-make. Okay, one of the comments really I had was because of the length and the amount of cord in here, they're like, wow, isn't that a waste of 550 cord in a survival situation? Well, this is pre-made for my pack to go out in the woods. This isn't talking about a survival situation. This is something I made specifically beforehand to keep in my kit with my shelter setup. So the whole purpose of this, like I said, yes, this would be a lot of 550 cord to use in a survival situation, but this isn't something I'm talking about for that kind of situation. I'm out in the woods. Oh, I'm surviving, let me make a a 3-strand braid ridge line for a shelter. No, I definitely would not do that, because there'd be a lot more uses for that 550 cord. This is something I made, like I said, beforehand in prep for my pack to use to go out into the woods for camping or hiking, or to have in a survival kit for my shelter. The other question is how I specifically made this one. I'm going to do another version. I'm going to show you. We're actually going to demonstrate how I made this. The way I made mine, as you can see, I braided the whole thing, just one length of cord, and then I just opened it up. You can take the braids, open it up, and I took the other knotted end and just fed it through. Okay. Now this is durable. I haven't had any problems with this. I've made this for a long time ago, and that knot, I made that knot extra big so it would not come through that braid. And which I don't think it's going to fail, but there's a possibility. Things happen. It could fail. That braid could pop. That knot could possibly pop through there. I can't say that it never will, and I can't say that it ever will. Okay, but I'm going to actually demonstrate a method of this that I learned from somebody else, and we'll talk about him here in a minute, of a way to make sure that to braid that eyelet into the braid itself, so it won't ever come undone. And we'll talk about that in a second. One of the questions I also had was where I got this idea. Honestly, I don't remember. I think I've seen it in a book somewhere. Honestly, I'm not sure. But I made this a few years ago. Had it sitting in the pack for the longest time. I wasn't using a tarp shelter for a while. Then I was rummaging through my kit to build my kit for this season. Came across this and was like, oh wow, yeah, I forgot I made this. So that's why I'm using it now, and I can't remember exactly how I came up with the idea. Can it be any length? Somebody asked, does it specifically have to be the length I made it, or not? No, it don't. It can be any length you want. You can make this 6 feet long, you can make it 200 feet long. However you decide to make this is how you're going to make it. The other question was the dimensions of it, as far as what do you need to do to make it so long, because obviously it's going to shorten. When you braid cordage, it's going to shorten. If you start with 10 feet of cordage and you braid it, it's going to be shorter than 10 feet. When you make the eye, it's going to shorten it. When we braid the eye into it, it's going to shorten the length of your cordage. So obviously, if you want a 15-foot long ridge line, you have to start with 3 strands longer than 15 foot. The reason I'm redoing this in this video is because I wanted to specifically give you an answer. I could not specifically give you an answer just out of guesstimation. So we're going to redo it with a certain length of 550 cord to see how much it shrinks after we get done the process. So that way I can give an answer to, hey, if you want it this long, start with this length. Okay, so we're going to start with a certain length and see how long the ridge line is when we're done. So that way I can give you an answer. That's pretty much it. So of some of the questions I wanted to answer, the rest will be, like I said, questions where how did I make it, they'll be answered during the demonstration. The idea that I'm going to do this time, though, like I said, is a way to braid, is just braiding the eyelet into it so it's one piece. Like you can see, this isn't, this eyelet moves, but when we get done, it's going to be completely one piece, so that eyelet is fastened in there. This idea I got from watching the channel of a gentleman named IAWOODSMAN. I'll put a link to his channel on there. I'm not taking claim for this idea. He doesn't mention where he gets the idea. I don't know if he came up with it or if he saw it somewhere, but if you want to check out his channel, he has a great channel. That's where I got the idea for this, the braided eye into this ridge line. He's got a lot of great videos up there, and he does a lot of demonstrations of setting up tarps and shelters using this ridge line as well. So he's got a good channel. I'll put the link in the comments. I'll put the link on the page here. So go check out his channel. That's where I got this idea. So I'll give all credit to him for this actual technique that we're going to be doing here in this video. So I'm going to get set up and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so we got set up here. I just got one of the support posts in my basement here. You can use a tree for this if you're outdoors or whatever. I just got to put a nail in there and got a piece of 550 cord on there just to help support this. Just makes it a little bit easier. And like I said, we're going to figure out what lengths we need. And what I started with here is I got 3 strands that are all 20 feet. Okay, so we're going to determine how much we end up with after we do this. I got 3 strands that are 20 foot apiece. And get them all evened, burn the ends off, and I'm going to take about maybe that much. Alright, I'd say that's probably about 10 inches or so, almost a foot, a little short of a foot. Okay, I'm just going to loop that over that little piece of 550 cord there and just tie a knot, just one overhand knot there. And just hold that in place. Alright, that's going to be this is going to end up being what we braid into the rope, into the ridge line. Now I want to start doing my 3 strand braid. Obviously you got 3 pieces. Grab a hold of them. You got a left, middle, and a right, and all you're doing is left over the middle, then right, left, and right, left, and right. Pretty simple. We're just doing a braid. Now what's going to determine the size of your loop? What's going to determine the size of your loop, as you can see here, I need to tilt the camera down a little bit. Alright. The way you determine how big you want your loop is after you start braiding and you get down, you're going to be then braiding this into the rope. So however long you go, like you see, if you just want to fold it up like that, that's how big that loop would be if I stop now and braid that eye in. So I'm going to keep going. I want a little bit bigger of a loop. And I'd say that's a pretty decent size, so we're going to go ahead and make our braid from that size. Okay, so now that I determined, where I want to stop as far as how long or how wide or big I want my braid, I'm just going to go ahead and untie this knot up here, just bring it around, and then I'm going to take, my 3 pieces. You can see I have a left, right, and middle on this piece. There's going to be a left, right, and middle on this piece. I'm going to go ahead and line them up so they match each other. And then I'm going to continue just going on and braiding 2 at a time. Like I said, you match those those pieces up, and then you can just continue on braiding. Still doing that 3-strand braid. Now you can, if you want, you can braid these all the way down until it completely braids in, or you can braid down to a certain amount of length till you feel that it's in there nice and tight and it's not going to come out, and then cut these off. I'm going to, out of my preference, braid them completely in, and I'll explain why I chose to do that in a bit. IAWOODSMAN shows in his video he braids them in a few inches or so and then cuts them off, which is fine, it'll work, but out of personal preference, I'm going to braid them completely in, and we'll explain that once we get to that stage. Alright, as you can see, I'm getting down to the end of those 3 pieces that are spliced in, and I'm just going to completely braid those in. Now the reason I did that, the reason I chose to leave the full length of those pieces in, you can see once I get to the end, you're just going to get right back to the single ropes, the single cords, and you're just going to continue braiding just as you were, and you can continue on. Now the reason I did that, as you can see, by braiding all 3 of them in, it made a broader braid. This is how skinny it is with just a 3-strand, and then when I braided that in completely, it made it broader. This is the part that's going to be wrapped around the trunk of a tree. So I left it all in there. I could have cut it off, say that far into it, and it would have been anchored, and that eyelet would not have come out of that braid. It would have been secured in there. But I chose to leave it in that full length, so that way it gave me a broader braid, so when I wrap around the trunk, there's more friction and more grab. That's going to give it a lot more tighter of a hug around that tree. So now I'm going to continue. Like I said, I started off with 20 feet, 3 20-feet strands. I'm going to go ahead and braid the rest of this till I get to the end, and then we're going to see how much we're left with at the end, so we can gauge, so I can answer that question: how much cordage do you need for so long of a ridge line? We started with 20 feet. We're going to see how much we end up with. So I'll be back with you once I get finished braiding. Okay, a little trick, because when you're braiding, especially a long length like this, and you're braiding, like I'm doing 20 feet here, and it does get a little annoying. It will start tangling up. When you start out, keep your 3 strands separated. I toss 1 to the right, 1 to the left, and leave 1 piled in the middle. All right, but you're still going to eventually, as you're braiding, it's going to wind up and get tangled. Now, you can sit there and you can fight, and you'll fight constantly trying to keep this untangled. But there's one simple trick. Even though there's 3 pieces of cordage here tied up and tangled up while you're doing this, it only is one of them that's holding it on. And you can take either one of them. I usually once I got my right one, I got my left over the middle, then my right over the middle, and now I have this piece on the right. All you have to do is just pull this one out. As you can see, as I'm pulling it, I'm bunching it up in my hands. And once I pull this one out, the whole thing drops apart. Alright, now whatever direction that came from, I'm going to toss it that way. And I'll go back to braided. All 3 of those strands are now loose from each other. And as you can see, it bunches up. There might be another technique to doing this, there might be another way. If anybody has an idea, please share. But the easiest way I found to deal with this, as it starts to bunch up again, I just grab it, pull 1 string. Now this one's coming from the left-hand side. But it doesn't matter which one you grab, because once you pull one out, they all fall free. Alright? That's just a quick little trick. Alright, so we got that all braided, got down to the end, tied the 3 ends, tied 2 into an overhand knot, then I tied the other 2 overhand knots over top of each other. However you decide to secure it. Ain't no particular rhyme or reasons the way I did it, but however you feel best to tie this. I'm then going to cut these ends down, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cut ends together, and I'm going to melt that with a lighter to get all the pieces melted together to make a nice secured knot at the end of that. But I got all that 20 feet that I started with braided. I'm going to cut this down, and I'm going to take it up and measure it and see how much we ended up with. Alright, so we got that done. Like I said, I got to the end, I just tied it off, cut the ends, and melted them down onto each other to make a nice solid knot. The amount that I came up with, I just measured it. Remember, we started with 20 feet. Finished, like I said, we lost about that much. I'm going to guesstimate maybe 8 inches, or not even 8 inches, less than that. A little over 6 inches for the loop, plus the about, I'd say about 10 inches or whatever for what we braided into it. But the end state, we ended up with a 15 foot and I think, 15 foot 6 inch length, 15 foot 4 inch length, somewhere around that, but a little over 15 feet is what we ended up with. So with 20 feet lengths, we lost about 5 feet through the braiding and through making the loop and braiding the loop into the ridge line. So that'll give you a guesstimation of how much to use. You can do the math yourself to figure out for what length, but out of 320 feet pieces, with braiding it as much as you saw me braid it, it ended up about 5 feet less than what I started out with, which is great because for 15 feet, that's a good decent length. It's definitely longer than the one that I made before. You definitely want to have a good decent length. You might think that 15 feet, wow, that's a lot. 20 feet long, that's a lot if you're using, an 8, 9 foot by whatever tarp. But you got to consider that you want some space to work with at the end of your tarp. If you're using a toggle system, you want some space between your tree and the corner of your tarp, where your tarp begins, to be able to tighten it down. Plus, at the other end, you got the loop part. You got to consider the size of the tree you're going to be looping around. That's going to take length off your ridge line, and also whatever hitch or whatever you use to tighten it at the other end, that's going to take length off your ridge line. So you want to have some space. You want to have it a decent size longer, a couple feet longer or wider than what your tarp is. So I think 15 feet is going to work great for me. It's definitely, like I said, this other one was 10 feet long. It was long enough to use for my tarp if I was using a smaller tree, but if I were to use it, if I only had thick trees in my area, it definitely would have been harder. So I'm glad to make another one, additional 5 feet. Once again, I owe this idea to IAWOODSMAN of braiding the loop into the 550 cord, into the ridge line to strengthen. As you can see, I braided it all the way through. That's not going to come undone. They're not going to come out. I am going to burn these down, cut these down a little bit and burn them into it so it's more secure, but that's not going to come undone. It's not going to unbraid itself. The friction alone holds it in. I braided the whole entire thing, like I said, to leave it broader because that's a lot more friction, a lot more grip on the tree. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it answered a lot of the questions that people had. I do get my, if you're curious as to where I get my 550 cord, I get my 550 cord from our friends who provided at campingsurvival.com. We appreciate them providing us with a 550 cord so we can do classes and do videos. So thanks for watching the video. Take a look at excuse me. Take a look at IAWOODSMAN's website or YouTube channel. I'll put his link up right there, and I hope you have a nice day.